Chapter 1, Introduction of my father. Well, my father's name is Thomas Lee Reese. He knows that I am absolutely a daddy's girl, and I have been all of my life. I will have to tell you a little about him first before I go any further so that you can see why my heart is swelling as I tell you this story. You see, Thomas Lee Reese is a man of 81 years of age now. He was born in St. Louis, Missouri, to Emma Murphy and Columbus Reese. His dad died when he was very young, and Mr. Ollie Mercer became his stepdad and helped in raising him. My father was born with poor vision. During that time, one might say bad eyes. He was born with cataract and glaucoma in both eyes. Nevertheless, he went to public schools to begin his education. He went to Carlane Middle School in St. Louis, Missouri. During the tender age of 5 to 7, he underwent many surgeries on his eyes trying to save them. Now, the first disappointment was when one eye had to be removed. My dad still had some vision and continued to go to public schools. This was during a time when there were not many cures for eye disease. He would continue to have operation behind operation and endured great pain as a little boy fighting for his eyesight. It took a couple years and he became totally blind by the time he was 7 years old. Life continued for my father after that, and he absolutely never missed a beat. For you see, after becoming totally blind, my father was enrolled in the Missouri School for the Blind. The school was located at 3815 Magnolia in South St. Louis. The school was a state boarding facility, and blind children came from all over the state and other states to get an education. It was segregated when he began in 1942, but by 1949, dorms, dining areas, and classrooms were fully integrated. Back in those days, as a blind person, you had to do it the hard way. But now as a black person, now you have two handicaps, racial and sighted, which together limited your opportunity when compared to the average man. My father understood that, and he embraced it by becoming very active there at the School for the Blind. He stayed in the dormitories during the week, and he went home on the weekend. Because my father lived in St. Louis City, he had the privilege of going home, where he could be taught chores and the meaning of family. He was able to keep a relationship and a bond with his siblings. His sisters, especially one of the oldest, her name was Lullaby. She would often accompany him to the school for dances and events with him. His other 7 siblings were much younger. When my dad became a teenager, he and his brother Calvin had a paper route. Yes, he was blind, and my father had a paper route. He often went to the barber shop with his brother and hung out with his brother and sisters playing in the neighborhood. My dad had a very well-rounded life. His chores at home was never limited. He was required to clean, mop, sweep, make up his bed, and do what all his siblings had to do in the home. He was never made to feel handicapped or disabled at home, and it would certainly prove to be invaluable even at the age of 81. These are some of the reasons I believe, along with the many opportunities given him at the Missouri School for the Blind, my father became a confident, responsible man. It was advantageous that the Missouri School for the Blind was integrated, and that allowed it to be years and years and years ahead of the public schools. Going to the School for the Blind gave my father the advantage in terms of relationships that would be lifelong, lasting relationships. The environment was conducive to learning. My dad and other students were exposed to dedicated teachers and professionals from all walks of life that enriched the academic and social experience they would have. So he being blind really meant no limits for him. Education and opportunity embraced him at the School for the Blind. Also at the School for the Blind, my father played the drums and the saxophone. He was a champion wrestler and just an all-around African-American boy. He did not let being blind hinder him from living his life. My grandmother instilled in him he was someone and would always be. He would have to obey, participate, and learn. And those three things, some he got right away, and some with some assistance, I'm told. Yes, my grandmother was an enforcer. I was told one day my grandmother came down to the school to give my father a whipping. And that taught him for the rest of his life. She meant business. My father was a student at the School for the Blind from 1942 to 1955. And at the school, my dad and other black students, they got breaks that black youth attending public schools in St. Louis during that time didn't get. My father graduated from the Missouri School for the Blind, ready to live his life to the fullest. Again, being totally blind was not a hindrance to him. He was aware he was a black man in a racially discriminating world. And even though totally blind and often classified handicapped, his life had no limits. He knew he could achieve whatever he set out to do. And that is exactly what my daddy did. Now, music was his main interest at that time. His interest in music was sparked and heightened at the Missouri School for the Blind in the 1950s, right before he graduated. He had become very good at playing several instruments. My dad was an avid musician, playing drums in nightclubs with some of St. Louis' notable jazz and blues artists, such as James Brooks, pianist Tommy Dean, Tad Smith, and saxophone player Jimmy Forrest, who went on to play for the renowned Count Basie Band. But my father did not follow that career. He chose to marry and become a hard-working family man. I think that one thing that all of us daddy girls will have in common